Going to announcements. If you're a guest today, will you introduce yourself and maybe where you're zooming in from? We'd love to hear from you. I know we've got at least one guest, Scott.
Hi, guys.
Don't be shy.
I'll introduce myself now if you guys can hear me. My name is Scott Silver. I'm Greg Silver's son. I'm based in Vancouver. And yeah, I'm a practicing attorney in Vancouver. And, you know, I've been reflecting a lot on the fact that it's been about 10 years since I lived in the States, but watching the news, which Canada's obsessed with American news, you know, I'm always up to date. And I guess my question for the group is, you know, what's happened in the last 10 years?
What's happened in the last?
And that'll be, I'm going to stop our conversation there. That'll be for another program because that would definitely take more than 1 hour. But a good question nonetheless. Maybe we can stick around after and try to answer that. Any other guests today? Judith, it looks like you're joining us in Girthland from Jamaica.
Hi, Graham. What's up?
How are you?
We're here. Remember, we're honorary members.
I think you're official members at this point. I mean, you
right.
You've had
so
more
I'm here
attendance.
with Girthland, and I think DLG Beth Thompson is on too, and some others joining shortly.
Wonderful.
All right.
Any other guests that want to introduce themselves?
Oh.
Okay, well, bear with me. I'm a little challenged technology-wise being here in Cazenovia, Wisconsin, that metropolis. But a reminder to go ahead and mute yourself if you are not speaking today, but we will open it up for questions here for Donna as she wraps up her presentation today. Our foundation board has 2 openings. Let Taylor know if you are interested. External community grant applications are due September 1st, which is, I don't know if anybody else thinks this. It's incredible to believe it's going to be August on Saturday. So we're only about a month away from those applications being due. We have postponed new member dues until October 1. But I'd say, you know, I think this is a great time to join Kiwanis. Hint, hint, Donna and others, you know, given the issues of the day. And I think Kiwanis, we're trying to address those, but I'll mention it here in a minute. We've got some great Zoom speakers coming up, but we would welcome new members. So those dues have been suspended through October 1. We're still looking to have a social outing, and I guess I'll comment that unfortunately through my presidency, we will not be meeting live again. We've taken that decision seriously, and you know, unfortunately the news is not getting better. It's getting worse. I'm a glass half full guy, but it's a bit hard to read right now, but we just felt it was in the best interest of everybody's not to meet in person until we really feel good about that. And October 1, Eric will make the decisions from there on out. We are less than $10,000 away from our Kiwanis legacy goal, and really appreciate those who have given and appreciate the consideration of those who are thinking about it. Want to thank Greg Silver. He has sponsored all of our Zoom meetings here in July. Greg is an attorney, environmental leader. I'll scratch that. I'm reading a lengthier bio from him here in a minute, so I'll stop there, but appreciate you doing that, Greg.
Thank you.
And as I mentioned, we've got some, I think, really good programs coming your way. Got some breaking news here. I think the basketball fans will enjoy this, but Steve Lavin, the former UCLA coach and current Fox Sports broadcaster, is going to be our presenter on September 17th.
Oh, that's great.
And he will be talking about COVID's impact on college sports, some of the key issues in college basketball, recruiting scandals, and the impact of the G League and players leaving early. And of course, I'll ask him about Butler and the Big East. He's a great guy. He's a really good commentator. And then we've got Matt Painter on September 3rd. And we also have Chris Denary from the Pacers organization, who will join us October 22nd. We've got David Woods next week to talk about a new book on IU Olympians. And then we will have a panel on race relations on September 10th. So we've got a number of good programs that I hope you will stay in tune here on our Zoom meetings. Taylor, any announcements that I missed?
I think you hit them all. Thanks.
Okay. Well, Greg Silver is going to introduce our speaker today, but I'm going to read a little bit about Greg's background and his relationship to our speaker today. So he's an attorney, U.S. bankruptcy trustee for the U.S. DOJ, appointed originally by President Carter, former chair of the Indiana Sierra Club, former chairman of the Indianapolis Greenways Commission, a candidate for state senate, Indianapolis City Council, and environmental lobbyist in D.C. Greg still advises on climate matters to both parties, including Christina Hale and John Ruckelshaus. He was instrumental in the passage of Acid Rain Control Act with Senator Byrd of West Virginia and Governor Mario Cuomo of New York. Greg was also influential in the creation of the federal Indiana Dunes Seashore Crescent Dunes expansion, the double hulls on all oil tankers, and the creation of a federal wilderness area in Indiana. Greg is a Sagamore of the Wabash from Governor Frank O'Bannon, a member of Shortridge High School Hall of Fame, a sponsor of the Eva Corps Holocaust Studies Scholarship at Butler University, and he recently supported the award-winning movie Eva 7063, which we also have another program that'll update us on that film, and we'll have a big announcement to share with you related to Eva Corps. And he is a member of the Amos Butler Audubon Society, Nature Conservancy, and Vonnegut Museum. And he's a huge Butler fan, despite being a Miami of Ohio graduate. So, Greg, I'm gonna let you take it from here and introduce our speaker today. And again, appreciate your efforts and your support of our meetings in July.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me? Yes, yes, yes. Well, before I begin, a moment of personal privilege, a couple moments. Right now, the two people that have passed away in the last few days, former Governor Kernan, a great man, a great patriot, a great Marine, a great flyer, and his death has been announced today. He did so much for this country. And John Lewis's funeral is going on right at this moment with former President Obama speaking. In today's New York Times, there is a last message from John Lewis, and I wanted to read one paragraph. When you see something that is not right, you must say something. You must do something. Democracy is not a state, it is an act, and each generation must do its part to help build what we call our beloved community, a nation and world society at peace with itself. Though I may not be here with you, I urge you to answer the highest calling of your heart and stand up for what you truly believe. John Lewis. Would we have had the courage that man had? I don't think I did. At any rate, because you asked me to do a very brief bio about myself, you already read some of it, I want to pay tribute to a couple people that have been important to my life. My wife, Rennie, and her rare book business and her constant support of me. Scott, who's on the video today, is on today. And my son, Scott, I'm so proud of you as an attorney in Vancouver, protecting the salmon. And Sarah, my daughter, Sarah, and her husband, Craig, who are teachers and who are enduring right now to teach people the best they can with their masks on, even if it's by visual. And my daughter-in-law, Kate, who's another attorney in Vancouver. So I've been involved giving back as much as I can as I practiced law for many, many years, mostly in the natural resources context, although I've had this quasi-judgeship for many years. I've been a supporter of the Navajo, the Hopi, a wilderness camp that my kids have gone to called Deer Hill in Colorado. I've supported a community a prep school in California called Southwestern Academy as a lecturer to foreign students on climate and climate change and jobs and relationship of the future with the coming catastrophe of climate change and how it it is going to affect immigration into this country. And that's no exaggeration. I've done a few things that have been of interest, perhaps to you. Two environmental cases that are just real quick that I think that a traveler, and I've traveled extensively from Iceland to Argentina, from China, this Great Wall to the Galapagos, and taken a lot of photographs, but more than my wife would want me to keep. But two cases of how a traveler can be an effect. And this really relate to what I'm going to introduce Donna about. I was in Guatemala in the 90s, and I was leaving an airport in the Tikal, and one of the tour guides came up to me and he said, "You've got to help me. There's a sacred lake. You're a traveler, but I think you know people. There's a sacred lake where they're going to build a new hotel and put their affluent into the lake. It's our sacred lake called Lake Chichen Itza. Will you help me? Will you help me stop that from happening?" And I said, "I can't guarantee anything." I went back, talked to the president of Sierra Club, and we put pressure on Camino Real to not do that. I went back 2 years later into the same area in Tikal in northern Guatemala, and saw the same guy. He came up and tried to kiss me. I didn't let him kiss me. He hugged me. He said they stopped it. They stopped it, and there's a force field where it's not going into the lake. So I stayed at that hotel some years later, and I was very proud to be a part of protecting the sacred lake of the Maya. Another very quick little episode. I was again in Guatemala some years later. There's an area in northern Guatemala that's full of wildlife, birds that migrate, that Donna's going to talk about, and monkeys and sloths and alligators and fox and Mayan ruins going back 1,000 years. And they were being threatened by burning, by being burned by people that had concessions. So the director of the archaeological site there asked me if I would help him. I went to Washington with him. I teamed up with National Geographic and Smithsonian Magazine. And we were able to get funding to protect that area from burning by offering the loggers who had concessions that may or may not have been legal rent. And where did that money come from? It came from the Department of the Interior of the United States. No one ever knows about that. It came from a bipartisan group of senators that I met with, Senator Inhofe and Senator Boxer, and Richard Hansen, the archaeologist, and we protected that area. It is today being guarded, and although it has drug issues and druggers, and the protection of the area is occurring. Travelers can have an effect. Travelers, wherever you are. Don't forget that, and that's my message to you. It's now my pleasure to introduce Donna McCarty. Donna has been a colleague of mine for many years, working together in the Congress, working together to protect the earth, working together to protect migratory birds. She's a graduate of the University of Cincinnati School of Design, and she also worked as an art director with the Jackson Group here in Indianapolis. But as a member of the Amos Butler chapter since 1975, has been instrumental in a project called Birdathon. Birdathon raises money for various projects to calculate how many birds are migrating and what types through Indiana into the Midwest and down into South America, Central America, over Yucatan, over the Cuba, back and forth. And those habitats have to be protected. So we've been raising money, and we did a lot, she'll tell you, this year as well, and over, I guess, $1 million over 30 years, to purchase scenic land, to purchase important land in Panama, Honduras, and now Colombia, and I suppose other places as well, along the coast, Honduras and Guatemala, to protect the lands where these birds that we hear every day in our yard, and sometimes see, if we're lucky enough, the Baltimore Oriole, the yellow warbler, et cetera, where they go in September, and where they have to have habitat to live, and so they can get back to us, as has been going on for millions of years. And of course, what it affects is habitat for animals that are there as well, and habitat for butterflies, and habitat for life itself. So for me, it's very important, as she is going to tell you, to give back to your community, to give back through Kiwanis or other organizations. And she has chosen the Audubon to be a very, very important historic factor in the history of our state's ecology. And I must mention that the license plate that has the eagle on it, she designed it. A living testament to her artwork and to the eagle and to the Hoosier, Indiana environment on those license plates. It's my pleasure to introduce Donna McCarty to talk to you about the Audubon Society and how we are all part of one world. Donna?
Okay, well, thank you very much for that introduction, Greg. And we have spent many years working together, and you and Rennie have certainly been big supporters of the Birdathon over the years, and that's much appreciated. Okay, Taylor, tell me, I need to what, do share screen, or how do I get my PowerPoint up?
Yep, go ahead and press share screen there at the bottom in the middle.
All
And then
right.
pick the screen that you want to share.
There it is, there it is. Okay, share.
There you go.
All right, and then, let me see, play. Just like we did a few days ago, but my memory.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm calling this presentation 33 Years of Birding for Bucks, because we started the Birdathon in 1987. It was a national Audubon program, and they wanted to do some kind of event that would raise money to protect birds. So I became the chair in 1987. So what, you may ask, is a Birdathon? Well, it's like a lot of other thons. It is an event to raise money. It's our chapter's premier fundraising event. And the mission of Amos Butler Audubon is to promote the enjoyment and stewardship of the birds of central Indiana. So we start out in January. We send out a notice requesting grant submissions on a listserv called InBird, because that's where people that do research and know about bird problems regularly monitor. So then we have a committee that decides which are the best candidates for fulfilling our mission. And those are the ones that we select for funding. Okay, so what do? We send out Birdathon teams. And we've had up to 14 teams, but lately we've been averaging about 12. And so these avid bird watchers go out and conduct what we call a big day event. So they go out in a 24-hour period and try to see how many species of birds they can see in the 24-hour period in Indiana. And then they get sponsors to donate funds to sponsor their team and make money for the Birdathon. Okay, so a little bit about Amos Butler Audubon Society. It's a Central Indiana non-for-profit organization founded in 1938, and we service Marian County and the surrounding counties with a membership of approximately 1,600 people. We are an affiliated chapter of the National Audubon Society. And our name honors a Dr. Amos Butler, who was a prominent naturalist of the late 19th century and the author of Birds of Indiana, which is still pretty much the benchmark when you go back to look at historical records of what birds we had then. That is what we go by, is Dr. Amos Butler. So you can also get a lot more information, of course, about our chapter by visiting our website, which is simply amosbutleraudubon.org. Okay, so when we started out in 1987, we had one team, the men's team, and that was comprised of Bud Starling, Ted Test, Carl Weber, and Scott Gremmel. And the only living member of the team is now Scott Gremmel. Because even back then, it was kind of a senior group of men, but Bud Starling was well known. He used to write a column for the Star, and probably because of that, the Indianapolis News, with, I don't know how many of you remember when we actually had 2 newspapers here in Indiana, but we did. But they kind of picked up on this fun event, and in 1989, they ran a front page story about this group of guys, this group of men that went out looking for birds in Indiana. So that was quite a coup. And I still Well, this is a photograph of that yellowed copy of the newspaper that I've saved all these years. Okay, so when we started out, funds were actually split between National Audubon Society, and we picked as our premier fundraising event, which we had learned from one of our members, Jim Carpenter, who some of you may recognize as the CEO of Wild Birds Unlimited. And back when he started his little bird feed store, which so many people told him would never go anywhere. And boy, they've been proven wrong. But anyway, he and his wife had been to Costa Rica and discovered in this area called the Monteverde Cloud Forest, where many of our tropical migrant species spend the winter, birds that you might be familiar with, like Greg had mentioned before, Baltimore orioles, tanagers, species like that, that do not stay here for the winter. You could purchase land in Costa Rica for $25 an acre back then. So that just, seemed to be too good of a deal to pass up. So we worked with the Monteverde Cloud Forest people in Costa Rica for several years and saved quite a few acres down there. So we also competed in a national contest with other chapters that were doing birdathons. And in the years when the contest was conducted, which they're no longer doing, we were first in the region in 1988, 1989. And from 1990 to 2002, we placed second in the national contest 4 times, third 7 times, and fourth once. But in 1991, we were the #1 chapter. And we were really proud of this because we were competing against some chapters that actually had paid staff, whereas our chapter was all volunteer. And then by 1991, we'd raised $22,842. But in 1993, we received a request from the late Professor Dr. Donald Whitehead for $10,000 to support a study of neotropical migrants in the Hoosier National Forest. So, connecting the tropical forest in Central and South America with our forest where the birds breed. So $10,000, as you can see, by 1991, we'd only raised $22,000 a total of, and we were thinking, wow, we will never, ever be able to do that. But we didn't do it in 1 year, but we decided that, yeah, we'll try to raise $10,000 for the Hoosier National Forest Study, and we eventually did. But in 1998, we'd raised a total of $63,065 in Costa Rica. At that time, Costa Rica actually kind of put a halt to purchasing more land, because already they had like 25% of their land designated for national wildlife refuges, which is pretty significant. So we had to move on. Okay, so then in 2000, we began a partnership with an organization called American Bird Conservancy. Because obviously, when you're trying to donate money to a Central or South American country, and we were a volunteer organization, we didn't have the expertise to be able to follow what was happening down there to make sure it was going to the right people. We just didn't have the expertise, but the organization called the American Bird Conservancy certainly did. So the first project we became interested in was one called El Chorogo in Panama, and that was right on the border with Costa Rica. So that was perfect, because here we just moved from Costa Rica to Panama. And so Birdathon grants supported the acquisition of land in this area of Panama, and we worked with the Panama Audubon Society, who only had 50 members. So we had 1,600 members, they only had 50, but boy, I'll tell you, they were a group that made something happen. And we eventually raised $43,000 from the 7 years we worked on the project, and we were the #1 primary funding source for the protection of this area known as El Chorogo. And here's a map that kind of shows where it is, like I say, right on the border. And in 2014, we were all kind of excited because we were notified that the nest of a bird called a long-tailed wood creeper, which was the second one ever discovered, was discovered in this area. And as Greg had mentioned before, when we are protecting birds in these areas, we not only protect the birds that we're most interested in, are neotropical migrants, but also endemic species that they have and other wildlife that lives in the area. So it's really quite a win-win situation. Okay, then in 2002, we began a local project with Marian University to restore habitat in the Nina Mason Pulliam EcoLab. And as of 2020, the donations that we have made there totaled $33,000. So every year we donate, usually about, we did make one big donation of $25,000 to chapter to get it started. But then they get a request for native plants that they can enhance this habitat. And the great thing about it is they get a lot of these urban kids and the university students involved in doing the planting. So it's really a great project that involves the community and creates awareness for our local birds. Okay, so in 2005, we got a new birdathon cause. The National Audubon Society had a project called the Important Bird Areas Program, where they recognized areas all over the country as important for conserving and restoring habitats for birds. And the birdathon was responsible for funding the ability for them to hire the first Indiana Important Bird Area Conservation Director. And we ultimately donated a total of $73,089. But our donations were able to get matching grant money, and that's how they were able to hire actual staff. Okay, moving on to our second collaboration with the American Bird Conservancy. So this involved a project in Colombia that needed support for an area for a little tiny migratory warbler called the cerulean warbler. And the name of the project was the Cerulean Warbler Corridor. It's a 9-mile-long agricultural area connecting a series of reserves. So yeah, connecting corridors has become very important because you can save a small area, but if it's not connected to another area, then its value is lessened. But if you connect these areas via corridors, then you really increase the habitat for these birds and allow them a way to move from one place to another. So we funded the establishment, we've helped purchase land, but also the establishment of conservation easements to protect the surviving forest, as well as plant nurseries to continue reforestation. And again, American Bird Conservancy is the organization that we have great amount of trust in to follow through on these projects, to do the on-site follow-up. So it's just been a terrific partnership. Okay, then in 2008, I don't know if any of you that live in the area have been to Eagle Creek Park and know that we have the only fully dedicated ornithology center in the state that I'm aware of. Some nature centers have a partial thing, but we have a whole center that's designated for just birds. So we've funded bird specimen taxidermy there, improvement of the outdoor enclosures for their live birds. They have 7 birds of prey there. And we've funded interpretive trail signage, and also for the staff to go to various workshops for raptor care training. And I've been a volunteer there since 2009, and I'm really privileged to go. Here's a picture of the facility from the outside, which actually was a former J.K. Lilly library where he used to keep his collections of things.
And the Feldman Nature Center, right?
In the Feldman Nature Center. It was previously the Feldman Nature Center, and until a new nature center was built also on the Eagle Creek Park. So here's a little photo of the inside of some of the exhibits, and we just get all kinds of comments about what a fabulous exhibit it is for birds. And of course, I visit all of them wherever I go, visit all these nature centers, but this isn't a bird on a stick in a diorama. This is pictures of, I mean, these are actual taxiderm birds in habitat settings. So when people come in, they know whether this is a wetland bird, a water bird, a forest bird, or a grassland bird. It's really pretty fabulous. And, you know, kids just love it. We even have a scavenger hunt in there. Of course, right now, because of the pandemic, the exhibits are closed, but I just got a notice that in maybe a week or so, they are gonna open it back up again. So we've donated a total of $42,000 to date for projects at the Ornithology Center. Okay, in 2011, you can see, if you remember back when we first started, we raised just a little under $4,000. By 2011, the Birdathon, we were raising over $25,000, and in 2011, we actually raised $31,485 in donations. And then by 2016, our third American Bird Conservancy project began, the Sierra Santa Cruz, as Greg mentioned. And this was a country that before we got involved in this, we didn't really realize how much they had put aside also for conservation areas. And, you know, when you think of these third world countries and they don't have the resources that we do, they've really been doing a pretty fabulous job, many of them, of preserving areas. And, you know, we never thought of Guatemala as having, they've even protected an area in like they've got a gulf there, so they protected the water as well as the land. But we were, because of the American Bird Conservancy, we were made aware of an area where an illegal road had been put in that was allowing logging and poaching in this habitat. So we were able to help them purchase the land. And of course, we don't own it. The local groups down there own it, to stop this illegal road and protect all this habitat. So a lot of species of birds that we have here, wood thrush, and oh my gosh, I've been hearing them. Beautiful call. Hear them over in Eagle Creek Park all the time. They have a sound like a flute. That's a wood thrush. And this is a Kentucky warbler that breeds in the park. Black-throated green warblers are primarily migrants through the park, and worm-eating warblers. So these are all these little jewels, neotropical migrants that all of us bird watchers just live for the spring migration to watch them come through. They're just beautiful birds that.
Donna, could the one on the second from the left, the Kentucky warbler, was Governor Frank O'Bannon's favorite bird. And
oh, is that right? Yeah.
When we used to go out and walk with him, he was always looking for that bird, and there it was coming to Indiana from Guatemala.
Yeah, so when Bud Starling led the bird hikes, I can remember having an entourage with Frank O'Bannon and the state police, I think, that had to escort them. You know, they had to get up early to make sure that Governor O'Bannon, you know, got to the bird hike on time. So I remember that. So total of Birdathon funds donated to date with $30,000 on that. And by 2020, the total amount of money we've donated to the American Bird Conservancy projects is $285,766, more or less. So obviously that's been one of our major focus to protect this habitat in Central America. And again, I can't tell you how much we receive American Bird Conservancy for enabling us to do these projects with them. But we've had many other Birdathon partnerships. So our chapter had a program for a while called Lights Out and Wings Over Indy. Lights Out was actually a program which has been recently revived, and that is to try to get the buildings downtown at night during the migration to shut their lights off. That not only saves electricity, but they have found that when a lot of these birds migrate at night, they get drawn into these buildings and, you know, hit the buildings, and they die from hitting the buildings because they're attracted by the lights that are on. So we think it's a win-win situation. You turn off the lights at night when nobody's there, you save these birds, and it's been surprisingly a tough sell to try to get that to happen. But we do have a new young volunteer with Amos Butler Audubon that's trying to get that started again, and hopefully we'll have success. But I tell you, we have volunteers that go out and collect these birds that hit the windows, and it's just incredible how many birds do that. It's like, I think, hundreds of thousands of birds a year that hit these buildings. We've also had wonderful partnerships with Ball State University and Purdue University that have ongoing projects, research on the cerulean warbler, which you saw a little bit earlier, and other neotropical migrants. And we just really feel like we get such a big bang for our buck with these, because these grad students go out unbelievably, you know, they will sit for a whole day out in the woods watching a bird nest just to see, you know, what is going on. But the data that they have been able to gather, and they are actually, you know, putting little radio transmitters on some of the birds now, getting them, been able to find fantastic information about where these birds stop, what kind of habitat they need to forage in, things that we need to know so that we will know what kind of habitat to protect. So there's the cerulean warbler again. We did a project looking at the migration routes of the black-bellied plover, and also the little saw-whet owl, probably well, it is the teeniest little owl in Indiana, a really cute bird. And you know, not much is known about them. They migrate at night, but once they started doing banding, they thought they were rare in Indiana. They weren't in migration. They actually banded quite a few of them. So all this information is really great for knowing where they are, what kind of habitat you need to protect. Okay, we also have worked with Keep Indianapolis Beautiful. I know all of you are familiar with them, all the great projects they do, get the community involvement. I've planted a lot of trees with them. They do a fantastic job. And so we've donated $16,545 for them. The Central Indiana Land Trust also does a lot of habitat preservation in here. Buying land, we don't usually spend our money to buy land in Indiana because it's so expensive, and compared to like $25 an acre. Actually now in Central America, we're up to maybe $200 an acre, but we spend money to support other projects that like the Golden Hills BioBlitz, where they send a bunch of scientists in just to see what's there and document all the species that they find. We've supported these places called For the Birds of Indiana and Indiana Raptor Center that do wildlife rehabilitation for raptors. I mean, you can't believe these people do it all volunteer. They use their own money. They're available 365 days a year. You call them up, they will go pick up a bird. They're just fantastic people, really dedicated. And we're pleased to be able to support, you know, helping them out, building facilities. And also we want to get young people involved in caring about birds. So we've supported the Jameson Camp and the Utopia Wildlife Rehabilitators, who do projects and have camps to educate the youth about the joys of the natural world and the importance of birds. And I love I didn't realize till we started working with Utopia what the Utopia stands for. And it actually is, it stands for Up to Our Armpits in Animals. So I thought that was pretty clever. Okay, so our 2020 Birdathon grantees this year were the American Bird Conservancy again, and now we have a project back in Colombia, which used to be a very scary country to visit, and then it has become more of a tourist destination. Of course, that's before the pandemic, but we're pleased to be back working on a project there. The Indiana Raptor Center, again, we're donating money for them to improve their flight cages. So when they get these birds in, they keep the birds that they can't release, but their ultimate goal is to take an injured bird and get it back out to the wild. And they take in, you know, like 150 birds a year. And like I say, they just donate their whole life to doing this. The Camp Utopia Wildlife Rehabilitators was going to have a week-long camp this year. Due to the pandemic, they've had to reschedule it for next year, but we are just saving their grant money for them. The Eagle Creek Park Ornithology Center, two staff members went to a raptor training and behavior workshop, so they know how to work better with these wild birds, because no matter how long we have the wild birds, I'm telling you, after working with them, they stay wild, and you have to know how to really take care of them so that when you give a program, you're stressing the bird the least amount possible and using them as an ambassador for their species, but you also really have to know what motivates them and how to make them more comfortable around people. Then we had a project this year with Keep Indianapolis Beautiful, the Sarah T. Bolton Prairie of Poetry Habitat Restoration. And prairie habitat is really in short supply in Indiana anymore. And this is a park in Beech Grove. So that will get a lot of public attention. And then Marian University EcoLab, the planting of native habitat and involving the local community in habitat restoration. Okay, then the reason that I'm really pleased to be able to talk to the Kiwanis Club is about every year for many years we've had a birdathon celebration party to thank our volunteers and the team members and our major donors. And a big part of it has been the silent auction. This year we had to cancel the big party, but I want to mention that last year when our traditional auction chair kind of wanted to step back a little bit, then Greg and Rennie really jumped in big time and helped us solicit gifts for the silent auction. And we've had fabulous donations, art and jewelry, bird feeders, plants and gardens, books and magazines, gift baskets and bags, food items and dining certificates, pontoon boat tour, and a day of birding, and I mean, just literally hundreds of items. And this year, because we aren't able to have the party, we're gonna try to get an online silent auction going. So that'll be interesting to see how that works out, but it's been very successful in the past. And the silent auction not only pays for the party that we throw for the people where we have a nice catered brunch, but it also makes enough money that we have extra money that we plow back into the birdathon to help fund our grants. So that's been really great. So Greg, I'm afraid to say you were a little bit off. We haven't quite reached the $1 million mark yet, but we're at $750,000 since 1987. And we're really very pleased with that we've raised this amount of money to promote the enjoyment and stewardship of the birds of Central Indiana.
Maybe we can get your publicity out on the auction when you have it, so that our members could bid on it. I'll talk to Taylor about that, and Tina and Graham. Maybe we could at least put a notice out as to how you can bid on things and let them know how it is.
Okay, great. Okay, so I just want to talk a little bit about our Nutty Birdathon teams, because you can't believe what they go through to do a 24-hour birdathon. So I mean, some of them actually do almost 24 hours. And they've been known to sleep on park benches, been stopped by police for wandering around like near Michigan City with a group of guys with binoculars at 3 a.m. hoping to hear an owl hoot or some night bird. We had the DNR team, and so they could all go together several years ago, rented a van. And in the course of doing their birdathon, they hit a deer in the middle of the night and crunched up the front of the van, but decided it was still drivable and still went on and did their birdathon event. So very dedicated. So we have mature teams. We have youthful teams, really youthful. We had, for a while, we had a team called Wren's Warblers. They were like 5 to 7 years old. Okay, we have married teams, biking teams. This year, you can see this is the picture dated this year, had the mask on, had to stay social distance. And actually, they were the top team this year for the number of species seen in a 24-hour period. They did it all on bicycles, 138 species, which I think is pretty impressive. But our all-time record-setting team is Wild Birds Unlimited, who saw or heard, because they do a lot of it by ear, 184 species in 2016. I bet most of you wouldn't realize you could see that many different species of birds in Indiana in 24 hours. And then we've had a lot of teams, of course, named after birds: the horned grebes, the redneck loons, the Las Aguilas arpias, which means the harpy eagles, and I probably really butchered that pronunciation, and the naughty little gulls. They were our fundraising champs in 2019, all-girl team. And then some birds that that the teams thought was really weird that they missed on doing a big day event. So black-capped chickadee, well, or Carolina chickadee rather. So in northern Indiana, where a lot of the teams start, they have black-capped chickadees. By the time they get down to our area, where we have Carolina chickadees, will look almost just like them, couldn't find any. None were and you can't find them at night. Carolina wren, very common bird. Got them in my backyard. Wood ducks. We only have 2 species basically of nesting ducks in Indiana, especially around this area. Wood ducks, not as common as mallard, but pretty, if you're a birding team, pretty hard to miss a wood duck, but it happened. Yellow rump warblers. They're the most abundant warbler species we have. To miss one of them is really quite strange. And I can't see what was the other warbler there? I can't see what it was and I can't remember, but maybe
Tennessee, I can't tell what it is either.
I think it's a palm, maybe a palm warbler. But anyway, for a birdathon team, pretty weird to miss that. And then hairy woodpecker, another one that every birdathon team. Mockingbirds, common in backyards, but a lot of times teams don't bird the backyards. But then sometimes they get ones they totally unexpect, like golden eagle, which very rare in Indiana, and white pelicans, which actually are becoming sort of, we're seeing more of them. Down in Goose Pond in southern Indiana, they get groups of 600 of them, but they used to be really rare. And then sometimes you just get birds that aren't expected, especially in May when they're doing their birdathon, snow goose and Baird sandpiper. And then there's just birds you just wouldn't think that you'd see in Indiana. And like this white-winged scoter, a Hudsonian godwit, a Franklin's gull, a laughing gull, that's the ones you see in Florida. And a snowy egret, another Florida bird, but been seen in birdathons.
Donna, do we have time for a few questions? I think there have been a few questions that are about maybe what you.
Okay, we're right at the end here, and I'll finish up. Okay, so these are some of the best birds that I've ever seen on a birdathon event. Pacific loon, glossy ibis, and a snowy owl.
I said to her, what you said? I said, what you said?
And I think this is about my last slide here.
Okay,
yeah, American avocet, black-bellied whistling duck, neotropic cormorant, and a scissor-tailed flycatcher. Okay, and I think that is it.
Graham?
So I finished up just as the hook was coming on.
Graham, there was a question from Trina. What can we all do to help protect and enhance birds? Donna?
Okay, well, a lot of it would be like joining an organization like the Amos Butler Audubon Society and supporting our birdathon with donations. Also, you can do a lot in your backyard, putting out a bird feeder, putting out a bird bath, trying to enhance the habitat in your own backyard, planting native plants, native trees that birds depend on, visiting your parks, your state parks and Eagle Creek Park, and supporting organizations like that.
Each of us can do something, don't you think? Each of us can do something
Absolutely.
to protect the environment. Before I end this, before Graham ends this, I want to thank you for being here to tell us about something that we might take for granted often, and that it's nothing short of something that's been going on for millions of years around us. And I want to thank Graham for having this, and Tina and Taylor for having you on. I think it's so important that that you speak to us about things that in our busy, hectic world that's going on all around us, and that we might think about in fleeting, but it's very important. And all the money you've raised, and all the acreage and hectares of land that have been preserved from our own donations here in Indiana, it's really a great accomplishment. There is something that Eva Kor once said to me. She said, each of us has an important part to play in repairing our world. And I know Graham and I very much believe in that woman's philosophy. And I think you're living it every day. And thank you very much. Graham?
Hello.
We
Hi.
have time for maybe one or two more questions.
Yes, thank you. Can I ask Donna a question, please?
Yep.
Hi, Donna. I'm from
Hi.
Jamaica, Bev Thompson. Just wanted to know, you mentioned Santa Cruz. I'm sure that's Jamaica you're talking about. Was it?
That was Sierra Santa Cruz. That was in Guatemala.
Okay,
Must be
okay.
another area, with the same name.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
And I do want to mention, even though I'm the head cheerleader for the Birdathon, this is really a lot of people are involved in, making this such a success. So I do not want to take all the credit, because a lot of people are helping out. And Greg, is one of them.
There's so many that have, and we invite all of you to be involved. All you have to do is contact me or Donna and do a little something to help protect our Indiana.
And one thing this year, if you know a business or something that would be willing to donate an item to the Birdathon, we could use it for the silent auction.
Don, if you contact me or Greg, I'll put a couple items from Butler into your auction. I did have one last question, and we got to wrap up here, but given there's so many funding needs right now, given COVID, unemployment, there are always needs around hunger, homelessness, cancer. Why should we, what do you tell people when they ask that question of why we should be supporting your work?
Well, I mean, as you say, there's a lot of causes to support, and everybody has to make a choice about which ones they want to devote their, expendable dollars to. So, I mean, all I can say is if you're one of the people that enjoys the birds that come into your backyard, you enjoy seeing them in the parks and everything, this is one area you can consider. But I mean, as you mentioned, there's a lot of needs out there. I think it's up to each individual to decide where they want to put their donation dollars. But if you enjoy these birds and you want to keep them around, we're out there trying to help.
And I've got one last question from my friend Gary Gardner. Carl Weber, who was on the first Birdathon team, was Gary's neighbor. When growing up, I knew he went bird watching every weekend, but did not know how much he was involved. I guess that's not a question, but more of a comment. So,
Carl is one of my best, dearest friends, a wonderful person. He was involved for years and years on the men's team. He was also the treasurer of Amos Butler Audubon for a number of years. Fantastic person, and we still really miss him.
Is my son still
Donna?
Is my son still there from Vancouver? Oh, he gave up. All right. Anyway,
Okay, well, Donna, I want to thank you. In your name, we're going to be making a donation to Big Brothers Big Sisters of Indianapolis, and really appreciate your time. We'll send you that certificate. I may go over a minute or two. We may not end at one, but a couple comments. By the way, I don't know if you can see this.
what happened?
Oh, look at that. Yeah.
Where is he?
We have beautiful birds that come here in the backyard. I may not have seen 184 yet, but I'm working on it. A couple last announcements. Roger Cummings, I want to thank you. Roger is matching donations for, if you contribute $10 today in lieu of lunch, Roger will match those donations. So thank you, Roger. If Taylor will send out the link again where to do that. And I also want to credit Taylor and Tina. Hopefully you've gotten the annual report. I get several of those from organizations, and the one they send out is just phenomenal and reminds me, again, of the great work we do. And last but not least, Taylor, will you pull up our upcoming speakers? I just want to run through that really quickly because we've got some great programs coming your way. Yeah, next Thursday, we've got David Woods. He's got a brand new book called Indiana University Olympians. On the 13th, we have Dan Miller of Historical Solutions. Again, on the 20th, we have Ted Green and Alex Core. Alex is the son of Eva Core. They've got a big announcement to make regarding Eva Core. I'm really looking forward to August 27th. The best professor I've had, Mark Leary, is a world-renowned psychologist who will talk to us about intellectual humility. September 3rd, we've got Matt Painter, men's basketball coach at Purdue. September 10th, I hope everybody can join us. We've got a panel discussion about race, and then our most recent addition, Steve Lavin, former UCLA basketball coach, will join us on September 17th. So I think a lot of good programs coming up. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. If you want to stick around for a minute or two after for some social talk, please do, and hope you have a great weekend.
Thank you, Graham. Thank you, Graham.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity.
It's our pleasure. Donna, I think my wife wants to say something to you. Stay on for a second.
Okay.
And Graham, we couldn't do this without you. There's my wife.
Hi, Rennie.
You did a great job. I sat on my couch listening.